y'all? It's your boy Jay, back at it again. Today we got the most evil depiction of the strongest by 100. Y'all know what the deal is, man. Follow me on both Jays here and Jays there. Get tapped on my socials. And without further ado, let's get right into this video.
All of you, why can't you just live normally? Why can't you all just live without causing suffering? To me, the real question is, why are you all so weak? Why do weaklings cling so fiercely to life? How can a creature that falls apart at a touch say that it wants to be happy? Your suffering is natural. You people are meant to be chewed up. In the world of
that
Jujutsu,
nigga Sukuna might be one of the. He might be the. In my opinion, he's the best new gen villain to come out. I ain't gonna front.
Kaisen, there are many powerful characters such as Yuji Itadori, the man who can bend the sparks of black to his will, and Gojo Satoru, the man who can manipulate the concept of space as if the world were his canvas. But above all is one who at the surface is a force of nature, and deep down inside, a simple yet complex man who's been rejected by the world, and thus forced it to accommodate his existence. This man is Ryomen Sukuna, one who does not only live up to his title as the strongest sorcerer in history, but completely embodies it as a way of life, and chooses to use strength alone as a primary indicator of value to all those around him. Sukuna is the main antagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen, who reluctantly coexists with the protagonist Yuji within his body as they go on a journey to collect and consume all of his fingers, so he can not only prevent the full reincarnation of Sukuna, but to completely rid the world of him by sacrificing himself once eating all of the fingers. Of course, things don't go as expected as Sukuna clearly doesn't want this. He manages to subvert everybody's expectations multiple times throughout the narrative with his overwhelming power and immense knowledge of the power system, and not only this, there are many other characters who need Sukuna for their own goals. In a way, this entire story revolves around him, and in this video, I want to dive into why Sukuna is such an interesting take on the strongest, and not only that, how Sukuna is unique from the other characters in the way that he serves multiple different roles as the strongest in the narrative of Jujutsu Kaisen. With that said, if you enjoy content such as this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to help me out big time, and now, let's get into the video. I believe one of the most important parts to Sukuna's role as the strongest in the narrative was the very beginning of the story.
Yeah, I feel like the more the story went on, the more we saw more. I feel like Sukuna at first was just like a kind of evil force in nature, and then he actually shifted in being more intelligent, more plain. Because in chapter 1, that nigga was just tweaking, bro.
As most watching this video should know, Sukuna was introduced at the beginning of the story as the King of Curses, a being at the pinnacle of malevolence. If there's any doubt to be cast on this belief, the slightest bit of hope that this guy can be redeemed like any other inner demon.
Oh no, he can't be redeemed. Nigga, I think when niggas saw Sukuna, he was like, he can be like everybody. The nigga popped up for after 1,000 years and said, where are the women, the children? It's going to be a massacre. Like, no, that nigga's evil, bro. There's multiple, I talked about it in one of my videos. There's multiple times where niggas was like, yo, Sukuna, you don't got to do this, bro. You know what I'm saying? Join us. That nigga said, oh, no. I like doing evil shit, nigga. I do it because this shit fun. Nigga, like, he's pure evil, bro.
Character. It's instantly cast away as the first thing he does is scream into the sky for the women and children of the new era he's been incarnated to. He is not here to save us. Another detail of Sukuna that's made clear from the jump is that, when he died, he found a way to separate his soul into 20 fingers, each one holding immense power for whoever consumes them, but they're completely toxic to most people, and the fingers radiate so much toxic cursed energy that it draws cursed spirits toward them. It's also a 1 in a million chance that someone could consume the fingers and become a suitable host for Sukuna. All these details of this character are made clear to the beginning in order for us to better understand our protagonist Yuji and the series-long dynamic that these two characters will share. Yuji's entire endgame is to sacrifice himself for everybody by collecting Sukuna's fingers and dying after, whereas Sukuna exists as a pure antithesis to this, a calamity whose entire instinct has been developed into one that follows only domination, cruelty, and contempt for the helpless. Their dynamic is very important to understanding the story and the character of Sukuna itself, as eventually, these ideals do clash in a final battle to determine not only the fate of Japan, but the world. Sukuna, after his revival into the modern era, is then approached by Gojo, the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, and the two come to blows for a bit, which results in a stomp in Gojo's favor. But the best part about this is that we don't really know how strong these two are at this point of the story, and little did we realize that we were watching a preview of the eventual confrontation between two gods of Jujutsu.
I ain't gonna lie, this might go back.
We realized that
this fight, when it gets animated, is going to break the internet. Nigga, the manga, I've seen talks of the manga fight being in a conversation with Naruto versus Sasuke and Shippuden. Goku versus Jiren, Luffy versus Kaido. Mike, the fact that a manga fight is in that convo of actual animated fights with voice acting and OST is crazy. Like, this shit, triple platinum. Like, bro, Mappa would have to actually just shit the bed with this one, but I doubt they're going to, bro. I doubt it.
We were watching
like,
a
the
preview
way
of
season 3 of JJK has looked, this is probably going to be season 4. Either season 4 or, like, they might just make this shit a movie. But either way, I doubt they fumbled this.
The eventual confrontation between two gods of Jujutsu. All we know is that Gojo was quote-unquote the strongest, and Sukuna was missing majority of his power, but despite this, still the king of curses. Of course, Gojo soon after this battle goes on to let us know that Sukuna is far stronger than it seems, as again, he's missing majority of his power, and when asked if he could beat a full power Sukuna himself, he gives an answer that only Sukuna would ever receive. One that did not display arrogance or even 100% confidence. This section here is almost ingenious, and a perfect way for Gege Akutami to plant the seeds of hype behind Gojo and Sukuna's eventual confrontation. I say this because we can't even begin to understand the value of these moments until we progress through the story, and it's only when we finally see how powerful these two actually are compared to the rest of the cast, we finally see that these early moments were far more important and serious than we initially thought. I find Gege's writing here to be amazing, but there are multiple moments like this throughout the story. One thing Sukuna did far better than anybody else was build anticipation. As the story would progress, we'd hear all sorts of things about this character and why or why not, depending on who's speaking, he should be brought back into the world. We've seen some of the most powerful sorcerers in existence be instantly cut down by him with absolute ease, and others enter panic attacks by simply sensing his presence. It came to a point in which you simply had to pray for whoever shared a setting with him.
Nigga, Jogo, one of the strongest niggas in the show, felt that nigga's aura and got on his knee, bro. Nigga immediately hit the yes sire. He was not having
as they more than likely would not make it out alive, and majority of readers had to come to believe that there was no way of stopping this character, and this feeling would only be exaggerated when he would finally be set loose. Sukuna would show his true danger level in chapter 212. This is the chapter that all readers are forced to realize that over the course of 200 chapters, we've been completely played by this antagonist who really did almost nothing. To elaborate, when Yuji would die for the first time very early into the series, and Sukuna would revive him, they would make a deal for Sukuna to revive him if Yuji could give Sukuna two things in exchange. First, the ability to gain possession of his body with the use of the word Enchain, and second, he will forget that they ever made this deal in the first place. Since they made that deal, it wouldn't be mentioned, let alone ever used. Everyone, including the audience, forgot about it. 200 chapters later, Yuji witnesses the lowest moment of Megami's life. Basically, Megami's realization that everything he's ever...
Megami gotta be one of the most hoed characters in fiction, bro. Yeah, that might be it. Most hoed niggas in fiction might be part 2. That shit gotta have Megami, because this nigga's life is terrible, bro.
...worked for may have been snatched away from him in the blink of an eye. And this is when Sukuna chooses to utilize this deal to initiate a possession of Megami's body, while his soul was weakened through emotional distress, and even more genius, Sukuna promised Yuji back then that he also wouldn't hurt anybody else. Pay attention to the word, else. There was nothing saying that Sukuna couldn't hurt himself while possessing Yuji's body, so when he takes over, he rips off one of Yuji's fingers, imbues it with all of his cursed energy, and stuffs it down Megami's throat, allowing him to take over his body completely. No more sitting inside of Yuji as a spectator on death row. Now, Sukuna has been unleashed. This moment to me does best at reinforcing what makes Sukuna such a dangerous and powerful character. It's not only his overwhelming power, but it's also his patience and understanding of those around him. When it comes to his patience, something like this shows us that
Sukuna Megami's body gotta be so tough. That nigga, he said this shit ugly, immediately slicked this shit back.
Always played a long game if it means his victory. When you think about it, Sukuna even carries his philosophy into battle, as his strategy is to typically get beat up by his opponents until he understands their cursed techniques and creates a perfect counter. When it comes to his understanding of those around him, Sukuna had to bet his life and soul that Yuji did not also include himself in the "don't harm anybody else" statement when they created the binding vow, and Sukuna won that bet. This alone shows me that, despite this character's malevolence, he's also evil and smart enough to understand others at a high emotional level. Another part of this character that I want to focus on that makes me present him as the most ruthless or evil depiction of the strongest comes from his performance within the Shibuya incident. In this saga, Sukuna is forcefully dragged out.
Nigga killed so many Nigga hit that shit with a tactical nuke, bro.
due to the shock of Yuji consuming too many fingers at once while unconscious. So under these circumstances, he's been dragged out through a loophole that allows him to do whatever he pleases, and what he does is nothing short of calamitous. I also think it's important to note that this was Sukuna's first possession in over 100 chapters, and the first one since Yuji was revived. Once set loose, Sukuna goes on a rampage through the city while battling against Jogo. This is due to a bet that has the stipulations of, if you manage to hit me a singular time, I will help you eradicate humanity. And of course, Jogo does not manage to land a single hit, and he is promptly executed, but not before Sukuna can recognize him and his strength, despite the two being in completely different leagues. Take note of this moment. But as we continue, Sukuna steps in to save Megumi from his own rampaging Shikigami Mahoraga. This battle being so disastrous that it ends with Sukuna activating his domain expansion, which renders a good part of
I ain't gonna lie,
Shibuya.
the fight in the anime might be one of the best looking fights of all time, bro. Them niggas was boxing, bro.
The dust. Many innocent lives stolen for the sake of his own amusement and layered plan. But worst of all, he chooses to shut down and give Yuji back his body after this moment on purpose so he can leave the site of his own massacre for Yuji to see. For those unaware, Yuji struggles with possessing Sukuna in the first place. His existence as Sukuna's host does make the world worse in a way, and many do want to see him executed as there's no point in keeping someone this dangerous around, and Sukuna doing this only reinforced their point in Yuji's insecurities. The Malevolent Shrine was not only an attack meant for Mahoraga, but it was also a psychological attack meant to hit Yuji Itadori, the man he despises most. This moment completely scars our protagonist, making him not only bear the responsibility for all the lives stolen, but striking great fear into his heart. This is exactly why Yuji is so much more in a rush to die after the Shibuya incident, as he seems to be genuinely scared of Sukuna's potential reemergence and what it can do to those around him. Lastly, it shows us how dangerous Sukuna truly is, in that every single appearance he makes in the story will cause a massive ripple effect of despair throughout the cast, and in a way, this makes all of his moments unforgettable. To circle back to his possession of Megumi, I want to use this point to get into the final saga of the series, in which we see Sukuna finally used to his max potential and all of the build-up behind the character is over. The moment Sukuna takes Megumi's body and regains agency, this story enters its final act, in a 50-chapter gauntlet of battles that all contain Sukuna besides one. It's through this 50-chapter Sukuna gauntlet that we learn much about his character, whether it be through battles with Gojo, Yorozu, and Kashimo, or his final confrontation with Yuji. But I think it's better to start with the first three, as they lay the foundation for his confrontation with Yuji, in which his ideals are finally challenged from the bottom up. Gojo, Kashimo, and Yorozu all have some sort of arc or storyline in which they all struggle in some sort of way from having immense strength. They all feel some kind of loneliness and a disconnect from the world that haunts them, and they have come to believe in their own ways that Sukuna can provide them any kind of answer, whether it be through a good battle or an actual solution to the isolation that comes from having power far beyond those around you. Gojo specifically is a bit more important, as he and Sukuna certainly do see each other as equals, and even after their battle, Sukuna admits that Gojo has managed
that nigga Sukuna said, "Damn, nigga, I ain't gonna lie, you was really like that, bro. Good shit." Like, he said, "You did well, Satu Gojo. I won't forgive you as long." That is the ultimate respect, bro. Especially from a nigga as evil as Sukuna.
A quote, clear his skies. But even then, an equal in power is still not the solution for Sukuna. He's a bit beyond that. When Kashimo comes to ask Sukuna about strength and solitude, Sukuna comes to recognize that Kashimo is actually a lot like him, and chooses to battle him in sort of a mentor-student teaching kind of way, while giving him the respect of using all of his power to eradicate him. And once the battle's complete, Sukuna explains to Kashimo that when you hold the role of the strongest, or to better put it for you guys, the best at anything, people will come to challenge you for recognition. They will use you in order to test themselves, and you should accept that role with gratitude. Kashimo wished to understand and connect with those who challenged him, but they were simply in two different worlds due to his immense strength isolating him, and he couldn't understand anybody. However, he still wished that he could, and it pained him that he couldn't. Sukuna chooses to call Kashimo greedy for complaining about this, saying that the fact that you already think about things like this is more than enough. Isn't that evidence of the quote-unquote love and humanity that you seek? To rephrase this better, Sukuna's interaction with Yorozu, Gojo, and especially Kashimo completely reframes what the strongest means in Jujutsu Kaisen, at least when it comes to Sukuna. Yorozu assumes that absolute strength must come with an unbearable solitude, and that Sukuna, like Gojo and Kashimo, is secretly searching for love or understanding to fill that void. Kashimo only reinforces this idea even further by openly voicing the anxiety of the strongest. When everyone is dirt beneath their feet, when no one can understand you, what is the purpose of that power? Are the strongest doomed to isolation, or is the endless pursuit of strength all that remains? Sukuna's reaction to this is key, as he does not deny the loneliness, but he does not romanticize it either. Instead, he treats the question itself as something misguided. Sukuna reveals that he already accepted the burden of being the strongest long ago. To him, challengers seeking him are not proof of loneliness, but proof of desire. People want recognition, meaning, and validation from the pinnacle itself. The role of the strongest is not to seek connection, but to respond to that desire by meeting challengers head on and ending them without resentment. What allows Sukuna to endure this role is his hedonism, as he eats, kills, and lives however he wants.
That nigga said I do this shit for the love of the game, bro. Shit, I don't give a fuck about connection, nigga. Like, you challenge me, and you want recognition, I'm like, bet, nigga. Oh, yo, dumb ass. But no, I genuinely think that Sukuna's a fantastically written villain. Because he's a pure evil villain that also is interesting. He's not just the I eat babies type of villain. Like, the nigga actually has depth to him, bro.
Embracing his nature without guilt or justification, and this is why Kashimo decides to call his answer boring, because Sukuna's philosophy is not aspirational or tragic. It's no more than stagnant and self-sustaining. Sukuna can survive being the strongest precisely because he refuses to grow beyond it, which contrasts sharply with Gojo and Kashimo, whose humanity makes that same position unbearable for them. Sukuna's ideology truly comes into focus when it finally collides with Yuji, because Yuji is the one existence in the story that fundamentally should never be able to stand up to him, yet repeatedly does. Sukuna believes that strength is the only legitimate measure of value, that the strong are entitled to live freely, while the weak exist only to be crushed, and that suffering is not a tragedy but a natural outcome of inferiority. From his perspective, Yuji's way of living is irrational. Yuji does not dominate, he does not indulge, and he never prioritizes himself. Yet, he continues to move forward even after being psychologically dismantled again and again. Shibuya should have broken him. Junpei should have hollowed him out. Megumi's possession should have erased whatever resolve he had left. Yuji went through hell in this story, yet he will always persist. And this persistence is what infuriates Sukuna more than anything else, because it contradicts his worldview without ever trying to overpower it. What frustrates Sukuna is that Yuji rivals him without becoming like him. Sukuna's strength is solitary, absolute, and self-centered, while Yuji's strength is collective, empathetic, and rooted in carrying the weight of others. Sukuna repeatedly tries to force Yuji into his own framework by telling him that his life is meaningless, that his suffering proves his weakness, and that clinging to life is pathetic, but Yuji never accepts this premise. Even when Yuji sees himself as expendable, it is still in the service of others, not out of contempt for life itself. This creates a contradiction that Sukuna can never resolve, because Yuji embodies a form of strength that does not rely on domination or indulgence, yet stands in front of him at all times. This is why Sukuna reserves his most venomous mockery, his tantrums, and his emotional outbursts specifically for Yuji. Yuji does not just oppose him physically.
He hates that nigga, bro. He will give props to everybody else before Yuji, bro. Todo, Maki, Gojo. He will give all them niggas props. Say, this is sorcery, you got hands, before he even gives his nephew any type of flowers.
He invalidates the idea that strength must be cruel, isolated, and dismissive of others. By the time of their final confrontation, this clash reaches its peak. Yuji no longer argues with Sukuna out of desperation or anger, but out of clarity. He understands Sukuna's ideology completely, yet still rejects it. Not because it's confusing, but because it's no more than empty. When Yuji offers Sukuna understanding and even acceptance, it's not weakness, it is superiority. Sukuna's rage in that moment exposes the truth that he'll never admit.
That was because Sukuna's hollow at the end of the day. His strength isn't, he doesn't seek to get better. Gojo, Kashimo, they seek to get better because it's humanity. Their humanity prevents them from just living a hedonistic life of kill, sleep, and eat because they have some attachment to life or have some value attached to it. Hence why Gojo did it when in the Shibuya incident. If Gojo did not care about human life, he would have just hollow purpled everybody. Nigga, everybody would be dead. Nope. No one in Shibuya is stopping a Gojo a bloodlusted Gojo who's going all out. Nope, nobody can stand to that shit. But that's the thing. Gojo was willing to actually put value in human life, unlike Sukuna, who puts none of that shit. He does not care about the lives of other people, which is why when Yuji told him this shit, and it wasn't out of desperation, it was out of superiority, this nigga was heated.
That Yuji's way of living threatens him more than any attack ever could. Yuji stands as proof that strength can exist without discarding humanity, without indulging in suffering, and without standing alone. And it is only after Sukuna is finally defeated, stripped of everything that defined him as the strongest, he's finally forced to acknowledge that his philosophy was not absolute. In the end, Sukuna is not beaten simply by power, but by a worldview that he spent the entire story trying and failing to erase. When you take all of this together, Sukuna stands apart from every other depiction of the strongest in Jujutsu Kaisen and, honestly, in shonen as a whole. Gojo represents overwhelming talent paired with humanity and isolation. Kashimo represents the tragedy of strength pursued in isolation, and even characters like Yuta and Maki show how power can be shaped by love, resentment, or perseverance. Sukuna rejects all of that. He does not see strength as a burden to be questioned or a responsibility to be examined. He sees it as permission to indulge, to dominate, to discard, and to live without apology. And this is what makes him so terrifying. He is not chasing meaning, redemption, or connection. Sukuna has already decided that the world must bend to him, and if it cannot, then it deserves to break. This is why I find Sukuna to be the most ruthless or evil depiction of the strongest. He understands empathy well enough to exploit it. Patience.
No, because it's not a Kid Buu situation. Because when niggas argue who's more evil, Sukuna or Kid Buu is more of a force of nature. He doesn't think, he doesn't have any consciousness. Kid Buu is like, I'd imagine Kid Buu is like a lion. He kills, eats, and does what he wants, but he doesn't have a higher level of consciousness that allows him to even understand morality, suffering, empathy, etc. He doesn't have the cognitive capability for that shit. Sukuna does. Sukuna is smart as shit. We've seen several times, time and time again, he has the ability to plan, to be patient, to strategize, tactics. He's smart. He just chooses not to care, nigga. Like, a person who doesn't understand empathy and does bad things is way less evil than a nigga who understands why it's bad and still does it anyways. Like, I 100% believe that shit.
Well enough to weaponize it, and strength well enough to redefine it entirely on his own terms. He waits when others would rage, he learns when others would brute force, and he strikes only when victory is assured. Every appearance he makes reshapes the story. Every choice he makes leaves scars that last far beyond the battle itself. And every character who faces him is forced to confront what their own strength truly means. Sukuna is not just an obstacle to be overcome. He is a standard that exposes the flaws, fears, and convictions of everyone who stands in front of him, especially Yuji. And yet, for all of his dominance, Sukuna loses to the one thing he never believed in. He loses to a boy who refuses to discard others, who grows stronger by carrying the pain instead of inflicting it, who stands toe-to-toe with the strongest by not standing alone, but by standing with everyone else. Yuji's victory does not invalidate Sukuna's power, it invalidates his philosophy. His strength was real, absolute, and terrifying, but it was incomplete. It could destroy the world, but it could not endure beyond itself. And that is what makes Sukuna special. He is not just the strongest sorcerer in history, he is the purest expression of strength without restraint, conscious, and compromise. A calamity that forces the narrative, the cast, and the audience to ask what strength actually is worth when stripped of everything else. Sukuna dominated Jujutsu Kaisen until the very end, not just through power, but through presence, ideology, and consequence. And even in defeat, he remains unforgettable. Thank you all for watching.
Great vid. Actually, really good fucking vid, bro. Dead ass fantastic vid. You know, I might get this nigga a like, bro. I dead ass might just sub up, cause he seems like a nigga who know what he talking about. But that being said, yeah, great vid by Honey. Y'all know what the deal is, man. Follow me on both Jays here and Jays there. Stay healthy, and stay blessed. And I'm out.